Talk about football.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the We Like Football podcast. I am Hayden Yarashunas, joined as always by my buddy Andy Watkins. Andy, it's official. We are a real, legitimate podcast.
Yes, nationally syndicated, and we're questioning how much we really like football.
Which is a whole hell of a lot. Yep, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts. You can catch us on TuneIn. You can catch us on Podbean. A couple other places as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, you could also just fast forward all the way to the end, and I will have a screen that shows you every place that you can find us. But it is exciting. We promise not to let you down. We will try not to let the ascent to stardom get to our heads too much, but we can't really promise anything. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
Not great, thank you.
You're welcome. So we have a whole lot of football to get into today, so we're just going to jump right into it. We'll start with the recap of the Week 15 in the NFL season. We'll also talk a little bit about some MVP favorites and maybe some dark horses as well in that conversation. We'll touch a little bit on the championship games that went on in college football over the weekend as well. And then we'll finish up with a little game at the end that we call 4 Down Territory.
That's right.
So to start, we are going to kind of go in chronological order, and we're going to start with the Thursday night game. The Chargers beat the Raiders 30-27. Big story that came out of that game, and a big story for myself because I had him on my FanDuel team, was Derek Carr injures his groin right before the end of the first quarter. He comes up hobbling. It's apparent that it was a groin injury. Kind of going off the field and went right into the locker room, ended up missing the remainder of the game. In comes Marcus Mariota, who really didn't have a terrible game. I thought he was actually pretty good. His statistics for that game, he went 17 for 28 with 226 yards in the air, 1 touchdown and a pick. Also had 9 carries for 88 yards and 1 touchdown, showing that he's still the mobile Marcus Mariota that we all know and love from yesteryear. Along with the Derek Carr injury, another story that was kind of from the game was there was a ton of missed field goals. Mike Badley missed 2, and the Raiders fumbled a snap on like a 70-ish yard field goal before overtime that chances are it probably wasn't going to work anyway. So that doesn't go down as a missed kick, but it's still the idea remains the same. And then there was a wild ending in that game. So I had to look up this rule, Andy, and I'm sure you saw it when it happened. But Justin Herbert fumbles the ball going into the end zone for a score. Now it was recovered in the end zone, but under 2 minutes. Did not know this. Under 2 minutes. If the player who is carrying the football fumbles it forward, no one else can pick that football up on the offense. It could be picked up by the defense, but nobody else can pick that football up and advance it by the offense. So a wild kind of stories within that game. We'll get to a couple more. Let's hear some thoughts from you, my friend.
Yeah, like you, I wasn't previously aware of that rule. It's kind of one of those niche specific game circumstance rules that you don't know until it comes up. The officials, I thought, did well to call that correctly. Huddle, take their time, make the correct decision. Like you said, Mariota, I thought was relatively impressive when Carr went down. I forgot who Las Vegas's backup was for a moment, and I was kind of like, oh, well, now we got a dud Thursday game, and then Mariota came in. I went, he might make a game of it, and I thought he did pretty well. I don't know that there's a quarterback controversy brewing or anything, but I was, for the most part, impressed by, as you said, the Mariota we all know and love, apparently. The other
love is a fairly strong word, yeah.
We like you, Marcus.
And we like football. Go ahead.
We're questioning how much we like football, but we'll get there when we get there. The other most noteworthy play from that game, good game, Chargers came out 30-27 on top. The other noteworthy play was Justin Herbert running with the football and being given a new set of downs after a hit that was, I think, questionably penalized. What were your thoughts on it?
I thought so too, and I think what made it most controversial was it was previous in the game. Hunter Renfrow gets a punt and fields a punt and starts to take off. As he's falling, I felt like he had gotten into one of these situations as well, where a defender lowered their head to initiate contact, made contact to the head and neck area, but it wasn't flagged. So I think that that's why it was the most controversial. And sort of to quote Jimmy Johnson, everybody is going to be treated fairly, but not everybody's going to be treated equally.
Right.
Quarterbacks are always going to be treated special. Quarterbacks are always going to be protected in the league. While I'm on the quoting of famous people, I'll quote Big Sean. Ain't nothing more important than the moolah. There's a reason that quarterbacks get paid so much money. There's a reason that quarterbacks are the faces of franchises and the faces of the NFL as a whole. They're always going to end up getting favored by the referees if there is a questionable call. So I did think that it was somewhat questionable, although I did understand it.
Yeah, I think I'd say that's a fair assessment. We've seen less egregious plays penalized and more egregious ones go uncalled. That tends to be the nature of the game, with the officiating crews differing from week to week. It's an interesting play, interesting discussion to take out of it, but I was impressed by Herbert and the Chargers. I thought they did well, and it was a good win for a team that has been losing a lot of heartbreakers. Good one for the young quarterback to stick under his cap.
Yeah, you could almost. Sorry, Andy. You could almost taste it coming at that point. Like you feel it coming. I guess would be a much more PG way to put that. With the Chargers kind of losing in such heartbreaking fashion. There you go. Yeah. I misspoke. That was funny. We'll clip that up for the historians later on. We'll let them worry about it. For sure. So yeah, again, the Chargers kind of notorious this year for dropping close games. You know, had a feeling that it was going to happen again. It did not. Justin Herbert kind of seals the deal there with the quarterback sneak at the end. Kind of famously all over social media yelling, I'm in, after he scores. So to talk about Justin Herbert's statistics from that game,
we've all
Justin
been
Herbert. Oh gosh. So just after we go live, we cancel this thing. Thank you everybody for listening to We Like Football for the 3 episodes that we had, and good night. No. Justin Herbert went 22 of 32 with 314 yards, 2 touchdowns. Austin Eckler had 13 carries for 60 yards. Jalen Guyton as well, 4 receptions, 491 yards in that game. On the other side, we mentioned Marcus Mariota's statistics. But Darren Waller is an absolute baller. I love watching that dude play. He has a tremendous story about overcoming addiction and just the challenges and perseverance that he had to kind of go through in his life. Had 9 receptions for 150 yards and 1 touchdown. Tough loss for the Raiders. They are still alive mathematically, but it's kind of that life support where we're just kind of waiting to pull the plug. It's still alive, but the heartbeat is faint.
Maybe a year away. They're not bad, but we saw their flaws in this game. I don't think Carr would have made much of a difference. As we said, Mariota played well, but 2 good young AFC West teams, I think, probably both on the upswing. I know you want to discuss the Packers-Panthers game, which kicked off the Saturday slate, particularly the onside kick call in there. So why don't you go ahead and take us through it?
Yeah, for sure. So the Packers and the Panthers played the first game on Saturday. The first game, second game, excuse me. They played on Saturday, which we got Saturday NFL football, which is always fantastic. It's always lovely to kind of get that at this time of year. But the Packers end up winning 24-16. And one kind of big story, or something that I've seen on social media, was the questionable call by Matt Rule to kick a field goal from the 16-yard line with 2 minutes and 4 seconds left. The clock was stopped. The Panthers had 1 timeout. Matt Rule opted to kick a field goal on 1st and 10 rather than to take a shot at the end zone or make any sort of other plays to kind of get back into the game. Just sort of at that point, the Panthers were down by 11. So in theory, the Panthers needed a field goal, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion to tie the game. And I saw a lot of backlash about why would you kick on first down? Why wouldn't you try to get into the end zone? And a lot of it has to do with analytics. And I think that it's something that we're going to see a lot more moving forward in those types of situations. So with 2 minutes and 4 seconds left on the clock, if you take that shot to the end zone and try to score, you need to score kind of on that very next play, because if you don't, you risk taking too much time off the clock and not giving your team an opportunity to get the ball back. If you do take a shot and do score, it's relying on you scoring the 2-point conversion in order to kind of keep that plan rolling and to kind of still have an opportunity to win. Because if you don't get that 2-point conversion, playing for the field goal is out the window. You now need another touchdown in order to win the football game. Now, obviously, all of this is reliant on the field goal being made, but the reason that you kick the field goal in that situation as well is because now you are giving your team an opportunity to make a stop. So again, the Panthers had 1 timeout left. There would have been 2 minutes after that play was run, right? So if everything goes exactly according to plan, and just kind of factoring in the time that's going to come off the clock with each play that's run, the Panthers could have, in theory, got the ball back with like 25 seconds left. No timeouts. It's not an advantageous position to be in. But at that point, when the probability of winning is so low, you have to make the decision that gives your team the best chance to win.
Yeah, maximize the opportunity. I understand the reasoning for the call. I understand why people question it, because on the surface, oh, you're in position to maybe get in the end zone now. You need a touchdown regardless, so you should be pressing for it. But I understand the logic behind shortening the deficit to 1 possession ahead of the 2-minute warning. Again, in a lousy spot, trying to give your team the best shot to win. Of course, Carolina fell short. Green Bay now takes over the first seed in the NFC. We'll see if they can hold on with 2 weeks to go. They do have the Titans coming up this Sunday. That'll be a good matchup. I'm excited for that one. The other Saturday game was the emergent Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. Buffalo waxed Denver 48-19. That game was close for about a half, but Buffalo kind of imposed their will after that. Just some noteworthy takeaways from that. Buffalo clinched the AFC East for the first time since 1995. I was 3 years old. Hayden, what were you, 2?
2.
Bills also scored a defensive touchdown for the second week in a row. Jerry Hughes recovered a fumble, took it 21 yards to the house. I thought that was kind of the turning point. From then on, it seemed, they say nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. The Bills look to be every bit of a wagon moving forward.
Yeah, and speaking of wagons, I am officially on the Josh Allen bandwagon. I guess I should have been before, and I wasn't before the season. That dude is playing lights out, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later on during this episode as well. But just kind of looking at his numbers from Saturday, 28 for 40 with 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, also had 33 yards on the ground and 2 scores with his leg. And not to mention that he and Stefon Diggs look like they've been playing on the same team together for a decade. Their chemistry is just ridiculous. Josh Allen seems like he knows exactly where Stefon Diggs is on the field at all times, and Stefon Diggs knows where the open spots on the field are at all times. It really is a whole lot of fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, it's a great connection. Diggs, 11 catches, 147 yards. Let's not forget Cole Beasley. Josh Allen found him 8 times for 112 yards as well. Beasley is closing in on 1,000-yard season kind of quietly. He's was a force on one of my fantasy teams all year long. Shout out to Lil Bees for that. Defensively, Buffalo put the clamps on Drew Lock, 20 of 32 for just 132 yards. Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay got theirs. They each had 11 carries. Gordon had 61 yards, 2 scores. Lindsay had 38 yards. So not a bad outing on the ground, but clearly not even close to enough. Next game we have on slate here is former Buffalo adversary, now suiting up in Tampa Bay, Tom Brady. Just agonizing for the Falcons again, come back from a 17-0 deficit to win 31-27. Why don't you tell me a little about that game?
Yep. So, I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean, color me shocked that the Falcons blow another lead to Tom Brady, famously the 28-3 in Super Bowl 51. But so in this game, we talked last week about Tom Brady and Father Time and how Father Time is undefeated. Tom Brady's given that dude a run for his money. It's absurd that against the Falcons, he went, I guess I should say, 31 for 45 with 390 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you don't throw for almost 400 yards at 43 like ever. It's just really a testament to how good of shape his body's in. I mean, he's famous for like eating avocado ice cream and going to bed at like 7:30 or whatever he does to take care of his body, but it works. So, I mean, kudos to Tom Brady. Leonard Fournette was sort of the lead back this week, and I was kind of paying attention to Bruce Arians throughout the week, and he was talking about Leonard Fournette and kind of being a little bit frustrated with, how the carries were being split between him and Ronald Jones. So Leonard Fournette became the lead back this week, had 14 carries for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns, a solid outing. Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and Cameron Brate had 6, 5, and 4 receptions. And Mike Evans went for 110 yards. Antonio Brown had 93 yards in the score. Cameron Brate had 54 yards as well. Not to mention, Chris Godwin scored as well. I mean, Tom Brady made everybody on that offense better on Sunday.
Brady's arsenal, Evans, Brown, Godwin, is frightening when they're hitting on all cylinders. Antonio Brown, 93 yards and a score, seems to be rounded into form. I'm not so bitter at him anymore. I kind of like to see him do well. I think if he continues to shine in that Tampa Bay offense, they're going to be even more imposing down the stretch. Just some stats for Atlanta. Matt Ryan, good counting numbers, 34, 49, 356 yards, 3 scores. Obviously wasn't enough, but he did ball out on the stat sheet. His top receiver, Calvin Ridley, another great day, 10 grabs, 163 yards and a score. But Atlanta, as has so often been the case for the past several years, not enough to get it done.
Yep, for sure. And you're skipping over maybe one that's going unnoticed. Hayden Hurst had 4 receptions for 21 yards and a touchdown. Sweet name, buddy. Sweet name. If there's ever a place that you want to come and talk about football, there's nothing better than having 2 Haydens in the same spot. We welcome it. Moving on to another game from Sunday, the Titans versus the Lions.
I hate you. Go ahead.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do, man. We're famous. The Titans beat up the Lions pretty good, as was expected. The Titans improved to 10-4 with a 46-25 victory over the Lions. Derrick Henry catches another body. That dude, if you were a defensive back, what are you doing standing up with that guy? Jump at his legs and at least miss that way so that you don't have to get put on a poster and go on ESPN's top 10. Like, just jump into the dude's legs, dive, make it look like an effort.
Just so your coach isn't tearing you up. Just get on to the next play. I understand.
Yeah, it's a business decision, man. It's a business decision. Ryan Tannehill in that game had 273 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. Corey Davis continues to have his breakout season with 110 yards and a touchdown. Not a ton to say about this game. We're going to kind of talk about Derrick Henry a little bit more later on in the show. So let's go ahead and move on to another game that I did not personally watch live, the Cowboys and the 49ers.
The Cowboys beat the 49ers. Who cares?
That's pretty much all that needs to be said. Yeah, the Cowboys improved to 5-9 with a 41-33 victory over the 49ers. Andy Dalton had 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard actually looked pretty good, had 12 carries, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns, tacked on 63 yards in the air on 6 receptions as well. And then CeeDee Lamb had 5 receptions for 85 yards also.
Not for nothing, they aren't out of the division race. They're only a game back of Washington. They got 2 NFC East games left to play. So even though I said on the outset we don't care, Dallas is still mathematically alive for the playoffs.
Yeah, it's worth caring. Everybody in the NFC East is, I guess, mathematically, but the Eagles are kind of like the Raiders with the having a pulse. But that's just more to comfort the fans and the family, not because they're still alive. Moving on to another game on that 1:00 slate. So the Bears beat the Vikings 33-27. Andy, tell us a little bit about the Bears and the Vikings.
Mitch Trubisky, just looking at the stats here, had another solid outing, 15 to 21, 202 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 8 carries, 34 yards. Not overwhelming, but obviously efficient enough to win. The backbone of their offense, clearly David Montgomery, 32 carries, 146 yards, 2 scores. I believe that was Montgomery's third 100-yard game in a row. So while Dalvin Cook is kind of his counterpart in this matchup, the more lauded individual back, David Montgomery, kind of outplayed him in this one. Dalvin Cook, no slouch, 24 carries, 132 yards, and a score. His teammate, offensive rookie of the year candidate Justin Jefferson, had 8 catches, 104 yards. I know you have a crush on Justin Jefferson, so I'll let you go ahead and say what you got to say.
The reason that I have a crush on Justin Jefferson is because the Eagles took Jalen Reagor before him this year in the draft, and I'm so salty, and I really wanted to see what he can do, and it just him being a baller amazes me, and it hurts me at the same time. Justin Jefferson had his 6th game with 100+ receiving yards. He also passed a dude who we talked about last week by the name of Randy Moss. He passed Randy Moss for the most catches by a Viking rookie receiver in a season with 70 catches. He also became the first rookie receiver yesterday to make the Pro Bowl since Amari Cooper in 2015. I know that the Pro Bowl is kind of a popularity contest, but there's something to be said when it's 5 years in between the last one that did it. And since 1998, just some names of rookie receivers who have made the Pro Bowl as, again, rookies. Randy Moss, Anquan Bolden, A.J. Green, Odell Beckham Jr., and again, Amari Cooper are the other receivers kind of on that list. So pretty solid company to be in. Justin, I banged the drum last week for you to win Offensive Rookie of the Year over Justin Herbert. I stand by it. Go get it. Come on the show.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson, tremendous outing, tremendous season. Not much else to be said in that regard. Second-year receiver plays for the Seattle Seahawks. We often mention him, it seems, DK Metcalf, one of our football crushes. His team emerged victorious against the Washington football team, 20-15. I wasn't able to see much of this game either. Doesn't look like it was necessarily a barn burner full of offensive highlights. Washington football team we know is a wagon defensively. That's not unexpected. Seattle, though, managed to clinch a playoff berth, win in a way kind of unfamiliar for them this season. They won mostly on the back of their defense. I see you put here back-to-back sacks in the final drive to seal the win. We know their pass rush hasn't been particularly formidable this year, so that's probably good for the fan base to see them win a game and then win an ugly game in different by different means, I should say, than we're used to with Russell Wilson, DK, and the boys balling out.
Yeah, there was actually another controversial call in that one as well. I caught the tail end of it just because if the football team won and the Eagles lost, that there was a little bit more hope for the playoffs for them. But there was another controversial call. Terry McLaurin got one of those helmet to helmets or lowering the helmet to initiate contact on a defenseless receiver call there to kind of set up that final drive where Seattle kind of hunkered down and got those back-to-back sacks. I know that Carlos Dunlap had one of them. It's escaping me who had the other one. But yeah, like you said, kudos to the Seahawks for kind of being able to put up a defensive stand when they are usually relying on their offense to be successful in the game.
And as we said, clinch another playoff berth. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson continue to be out. I'm sorry, I got highlights going somewhere. Oh, holy cow. Geez, technical difficulties. All right, moving on.
We got to fire our producer, man. We have to fire the producer. That's the end all be all of
it. Anyway, don't let them see you sweat. Seattle, Pete Carroll, clinch a playoff berth again. Another team, another coach we're used to seeing in the playoffs. Not this year. New England officially eliminated from the playoffs with their loss to Miami on Sunday. Dolphins emerged from that one, 22-12 victors. Tua Tagovailoa.
Yep, that's it.
Nothing spectacular. 20-26, 145 yards and a pick. 2 rushing scores, but it is noteworthy that they got it done with who's who of who in their pass catchers. Durham Smith, any idea?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Lynn Bowden, I believe, was a quarterback somewhere, like a Kentucky maybe. I've heard the name. I know that.
But either way, certainly not a star-studded cast. And also, you want to talk about another nobody. Salvin Ahmed had 23 carries for 122 yards and a touchdown. I picked him up on my fantasy team halfway through the season just because I needed a back 1 week because of buys and injuries. And I was like, all right, well, this dude doesn't have a picture. This will probably pan out well. And then he put up like 20 points. I was like, okay, buddy, go ahead.
Salvin Ahmed, Tua, Lynn Bowden, Durham Smith. Obviously, Tua is a household name from his Alabama days. The rest of the crew, I don't know. So kudos to them getting it done. Brian Flores, tremendous coaching job this season. We'll see what they do as far as playoff time comes. Right now, they are in. They in Baltimore will be a heated race down to the end for that 7th seed. A worthy team will be left out. Just to speak on New England a little while we're here, Cam Newton, not a bad statistical outing by his standards this year. 17 of 27, 209 yards, 9 carries for 38 yards. Notably, again, Cam was held out of the end zone. This year, he's thrown just 5 touchdowns in 13 starts. That's not going to get it done in the NFL in 2020. I like Cam. I think he's gotten something of a bad rap. I think he, at his peak, was a better quarterback than given credit for, perhaps. But it does appear that the end is drawn near for Cam as a viable starting quarterback in the league.
Yep, and Jacoby Myers also had 7 receptions for 111 yards in that game as well. The Colts hold off the Texans. Just to kind of move on to the next game, the Colts hold off the Texans, improved to 10-4. They win 27-20. Phillip Rivers had 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor, who we've talked about, is the he is the kind of set in stone number 1 back in that backfield with Nyheim Hines. 16 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. Hines as well tacked on 43 yards, 2 receptions for 11 yards also. And then Zach Pascal led the receivers with 5 receptions, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton, who's having a quiet year, I guess, by his standards, 4 receptions for 71 yards. And then we've talked about this before, but the Colts defense is kind of what makes them a little bit scarier than other teams in the AFC who are kind of fighting for playoff spots or who do end up getting into the playoffs. The Colts are a little bit scarier with their defense. DeForest Buckner had 3 sacks. The Colts had 5 sacks altogether, so a solid outing from the defense.
Yeah, DeForest Buckner criminally left out of the Pro Bowl. One of the best defensive linemen in football. Don't get me wrong, his wallet's not hurting. He's probably not too bent out of shape, but Buckner should have been a Pro Bowler this year. While we're on the subject, just a quick detour, a few other snubs. Trey Hendrickson kind of quietly has, I believe, 12.5 sacks right there with Aaron Donald, yet he missed the Pro Bowl out of New Orleans. And then Robert Tonyan with 10 scores. He, too, in my opinion, was a snub. Evan Ingram made it in over him. Their yards and receptions are comparable, but Tonyan blows him out of the way as far as a touchdown goes. I'll get off my soapbox here and move on to the next game, the Baltimore Ravens, Jacksonville Jaguars. Kind of what we expected it to be. The Ravens imposed their will, won 40-14. Lamar Jackson continues to bounce back, 17-22, 243 yards, 3 scores, and another on the ground. J.K. Dobbins led the way out of the backfield with 64 yards and a score. Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, both played well. And then defensively for Baltimore, they kind of got the pass rush going. Yannick Ngakoue, I can't say that one.
I think it's Yannick. I believe it's Yannick, but
listen, Ngakoue is the hard part. All right,
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, he came through with 2 sacks. Matthew Judon, first-round rookie Patrick Queen, and Derek Wolfe all chipped in with 1 as well. Notably, the Jaguars here might win by losing. They move into the pole position for the number 1 pick and what we all expect to be Clemson's Trevor Lawrence. We'll talk about him a bit later on.
Yep, only to break the hearts of Jets fans everywhere one more time, because I'm sure they haven't heard about it yet. It's been kind of quiet, so I'm sure that'll be a surprise for them. Ravens Jaguars, I actually got to see live as somebody who lives in Baltimore. Live. It was televised on my TV, but there was a big man pickup. So Lamar Jackson, I believe, fumbled the football. A big man, one of their guards, I can't remember who it was, picks up the ball and in true offensive lineman fashion, 2 hands on the football, rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, running over dudes, making people jump on his back, was just phenomenal. He ended up getting hurt that play. I don't know if he ever came back. I don't know if he just needed to get some oxygen, because it was a advancement of 22 yards. So that might have been a long way for him. But that is one of my favorite things in football. Love when big dudes touch the football. So that was a lot of fun as well. Something that, well, a game that we all knew that I was going to talk about, the Oklahoma alumni game here with the Arizona Cardinals and the Philadelphia Eagles. I am a little bit bent out of shape, not because of the results of the game, but because I had purchased plane tickets back in July to go to Phoenix, stay with my good buddy Pablo. Shout out Pobs, what up, man?
Hi, Bob.
And go to see that game. Lo and behold, COVID kind of had other plans. There were still fans in the stands, but it didn't seem like it would be worth it. We ended up postponing our trip. But what a game to be seen, man. What a game to be seen. So the Cardinals end up beating the Eagles 33-26, had a little bit of everything. Kyler Murray is really, really good, man. Kyler Murray is really, really good. In a couple years, he's going to be in the conversation for an MVP. He's going to have his team where him and Cliff Kingsbury want it to be. He went 27 of 36 with 406 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Also, everybody knows that the dude can scoot. Had 8 carries for 29 yards and a touchdown as well. On the other side, now, last week, I had mentioned that Jalen Hurts was a combination of Michael Vick and of Jesus Christ himself. I was only joking a little bit. But this dude came out and had another strong performance, 22 of 44 with 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Also had, oh, I'm sorry, I lost my guy here. No interceptions for Jalen Hurts. Sorry, 24 for 44, 338, and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 11 carries for 63 yards, and a touchdown as well on the ground. Talk about some of the better folks to do it. Larry Fitzgerald also had 3 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown. On the touchdown catch, I don't know if you saw it during the highlights, was just absolutely ridiculous. Kind of caught it through the arm of the defender in the back of the end zone, falling down, just making a true Larry Fitzgerald type of play. Also, I don't know if you've heard of DeAndre Hopkins as well. He's also pretty good at football. When in doubt, Kyler Murray's just going to kind of toss it up to that dude. DeAndre Hopkins had 9 receptions for 169 yards and a touchdown. And then in the backfield, Chase Edmonds kind of led the way for the Arizona Cardinals with 11 carries and 49 yards also. I brought up the Jalen Hurts to Michael Vick thing. So Jalen Hurts was actually the first Philadelphia Eagles quarterback since Michael Vick to have 300 passing yards in a game, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown, which paints a picture for Jalen Hurts. Also says something about the guy and why there was a quarterback controversy prior to Jalen Hurts.
Yes. We know, I'm sure you've seen Carson Wentz supposedly said that he doesn't want to stay in Philly as the backup. Well, Carson, happy trails. It's safe to say Jalen Hurts has taken over as the starter. That won't change. I'm interested to see where Wentz might catch on. I know Indy's an option, perhaps Chicago. Carson Wentz, second overall pick, could well bounce back. Speaking of second overall picks, the New York Jets bounced themselves to the second overall pick with their win against the Rams this past Sunday. Jets took that one 23-20. I didn't see much of the game. I obviously mentioned what the key takeaway was from that game. We'll talk about that more later on. For the Rams, that they lost pole position in the NFC West. They, I believe, do play Seattle down the stretch yet, so they could play their way back into it. But obviously a crippling loss at this point of the year for a Rams team that we thought had kind of bounced back from a down season last year. Is it a blip on the radar, or you think more reason to be concerned?
I did not see the game live, but anytime that a 9-5 team loses to an 0 or I guess at that point a 9-4 team loses to an 0-12 team, there's cause for concern. I believe that there was some turnovers. I see that Jared Goff had an interception. The Rams could be exposed, and the NFC West kind of continues to be just a total mind fuck. Like 1 minute you look and the Rams are the best team clearing away, and then another minute the Seattle Seahawks are clearing away the best team, and then oh yeah, here come the Cardinals as well. It's pretty safe to rule out the 49ers, but I mean with the division being where it is, a couple weeks ago that might have been a different story also. But I guess there is cause for concern. I'm interested to see how that race goes again for the NFC West as we kind of wind down here towards the end of the NFL season this year.
On the other end of the spectrum, that game, implications for first overall pick, a game that featured two teams who are vying for the 32nd overall pick, have their sights set on the Lombardi Trophy. Yet the Kansas City Chiefs, New Orleans Saints, probably the game of the week. The Chiefs managed to take that one 32-29. Great game, met expectations as far as I'm concerned. Outside of the Steelers, that's the only game I sat down and watched start to finish without interruption this week, and it met my expectations. What were your thoughts?
So my thoughts were, wow, this Eagles-Cardinals game is really, really good. They were in the same time slot. Anytime the Eagles are playing football, I'm going to watch them play football. I also was not disappointed with the game that I saw. Just from the statistics and what we could pull, in case you haven't heard, Patrick Mahomes is pretty good. He went 26 for 47 with 254 yards and 3 touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell in the backfield. It looks like they both had a solid game, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire having 14 carries for 79 yards, Le'Veon Bell having 15 carries for 62 yards, also finding the end zone once. You mentioned Robert Tonyan before. He's tied for first with receiving touchdowns for a tight end. The person he's tied with is Travis Kelce, who was also really good. He had 8 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. And then Tyreek Hill also, Jesus, that offense is ridiculous. Tyreek Hill had 6 receptions for 53 yards and a score also.
Yep. You mentioned Edwards-Helaire and Bell. They both played well. If you didn't see, Edwards-Helaire went out during the game. I'm not sure what the significance of the injury is. He didn't return. Le'Veon picked up the slack from there.
I thought I saw something about it being a high ankle sprain where he may miss the rest of the regular season. Yep, I thought I saw that on.
Yeah. I just Googled it. I see it now. He's out for the rest of the regular season. Obviously, KC's all but locked up the first seed. That's not a crippling blow by any means, especially with Le'Veon Bell perhaps rounding into form. Wow, we brought up Antonio Brown ball, and Bell continues to ball in KC. Boy, if that winds up being a Super Bowl, I'm not watching. Anyhow,
take it back to 2011, 2012 in Pittsburgh. Honestly, we talk about teams that have to run the football in order to be successful. The Titans, the Ravens, teams like that. The Chiefs could go out and not run the ball a single time and still be effective on offense, so they're not hurting for it.
No, they're just they're being respectful of their adversaries, if anything. On the other side of the ball, Drew Brees did throw for 3 touchdowns. However, noteworthy is his completion percentage, 15 of 34. That was one of the worst games he ever had in terms of efficiency, completion percentage. That's a testament to how well KC's defense played. Even though the score is 32-29, I have a note in here. This is how good defense is played in the modern NFL. You're going to give up 30 points to a team like the Chiefs. You're going to give up 30 points to a team like the Saints. It's not about the points you allow. It's about making timely stops, plays when you need to make them, third downs, red zone. These are that's how good defense is played in the modern NFL. Is my main takeaway from a game where 60 points were scored. So do what you will with that.
No, you said it absolutely perfectly. You're not going to pitch a shutout against a good team, against a good offense in 2020. It's just not how the game works. And I mean, especially when you talk about teams that are loaded like the Chiefs and the Saints as well. I believe notably from that game, I don't have it here in front of me, but I believe that Michael Thomas was put on IR as well during that game. So obviously a blow to the Saints. Drew Brees, you mentioned having a tough day lest we not forget he's coming off of breaking like every rib in his body and puncturing a lung as well. So kind of coming back into form there. Did you touch on Alvin Kamara? I didn't. No.
No.
Okay.
Kamara,
So
14 touches, 94 total yards, a score. Just another run-of-the-mill outing for really a transcendent talent. Not much more I think needs to be said there. Next game on the dock was the Browns and the Giants Sunday night. Browns 20-6, kind of what we expected. Baker Mayfield had a fabulous outing, 27-32, 297 yards and a score. Giants kind of clamped down on their running game. Nick Chubb only 15 carries, 40 yards. Kareem Hunt, I know for the dud he gave my fantasy team was worse. He had something like 10 touches and, 20, 25 yards. Not a Kareem Hunt-like outing, but again, the Browns managed to persevere, win by 2 scores. Spread the wealth around in the passing game. Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who you may remember from Michigan, Austin Hooper all contributed. On the other side of the ball, the Giants unexpectedly weren't much of a threat to Cleveland, which isn't too surprising given the fact that their backfield was led by Colt McCoy and Alfred Morris, a couple of Washington used to be Redskins retreads in the year 2020. Garner starts on Sunday Night Football, so good for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And yep, like you said, Baker Mayfield is just kind of rolling at this point. A lot of question marks surrounding him leading into this year, and just I guess throughout his career as an entirety, being the first overall pick. You do have certainly big shoes to fill, and then there was questions about his accuracy and just a couple question marks. So definitely nice to see him kind of rolling. So one final thing that happened this week: Ben Roethlisberger eclipses 60,000 passing yards in his career. He is 7th all-time behind Dan Marino. He is also one of 3 quarterbacks who have 60,000 passing yards throughout their career and 2 Super Bowl rings. That's the best thing that happened last night. Not the best thing that happened last night was the football game, if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which half of the hosts on this show happen to be. Bengals beat the Steelers 27-17 on Monday Night Football.
I don't want to talk about it.
I will then. So Ryan Finley went 7 of 13 with 89 yards, had a touchdown. He also added on 10 carries, 83 yards, and a rushing touchdown.
I changed my mind. I want to talk about it.
Go for it, buddy. Go for it.
How did this team go 11-0? Is this the same football team?
It's therapeutic, buddy. Let it out. It's therapeutic.
It's the same players on the field. Score a goddamn point. What do the Steelers do well? So what do the Steelers do well?
Are you asking me to answer that question now, or is this just you yelling it to the heavens?
They can't stretch the field. They can't run the ball. Their O-line gets no push. They're so woefully injured in the middle of their defense that the linebacker Marcus Allen, former Penn State safety, is playing linebacker. I don't know if I'm even mad at the defense yet. Still, Ryan Finley should not be going untouched for 25-yard touchdowns. I'll say that until I'm cold and dead. You can pry a terrible towel out of my hands. I don't know where to begin. The only good thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers right now is T.J. Watt. I don't know that the Steelers have won since we started this godforsaken podcast. I don't know if I'll be here next week. You might see me swinging back there when they lose to the Colts.
Oh, buddy. I'm glad you got to say it. I'm glad you got to say it out loud. It's nice to just let it off your chest. That doesn't absolve the Steelers of not performing super well recently. So Ben Roethlisberger last night went 20 of 38, had 170 yards, had a touchdown, had a pick. Just as an observer and somebody who trusts their eyes when it comes to football, it looks like, I don't know if Ben Roethlisberger was confused, but there was consistently a defensive player sinking back into that like hook to curl area, whether it was a linebacker or a nickel defensive back, constantly kind of fooling Ben and baiting him into throwing that throw, which could have been picked off a couple times. I thought his accuracy was not great either. Again, eye test, just looking at the throws, kind of missing here and there. The run game wasn't as bad as it normally is. Benny Snell had 18 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. He also tacked on 3 receptions for 23 yards. Deontay Johnson didn't drop as many passes as he normally does, had 8 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown. And Chase Claypool caught the ball 3 times and had 54 yards as well.
They came out of the half there, and for a moment, I thought maybe they'd settled down. They were going to get things right. But then, the initial surge, Cincinnati calmed down from Pittsburgh's initial second half surge and managed to regain control of the game. I've calmed down a bit now. It felt good to get it off my chest. You're not wrong.
Good.
As you said, there were some positive takeaways. Somehow the running game did look better. Deontay Johnson got off the schneid a little bit. You feel like if this offense can figure out how to do anything that they can get right, because they're certainly not devoid of talent. Claypool, Deontay, who you didn't mention, Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm gonna try not to get upset, but stop dancing. Stop dancing. You had 3 catches for 15 yards. I have a shirt where Juju is standing over Vontaze Burfict, and it says karma underneath it. If Bengals fans don't capitalize and make a karma t-shirt of Von Bell with Juju's head in the end zone because he knocked his block off, and it was overdue. Win a game, make a play, stop dancing. I love Terrell Owens. I love Randy Moss. I love the showboating. Chad Johnson rocks. You know something, though? Those guys made plays. Juju, do something. Yeah, I'm tired of TikTok. Win a game.
Certainly a quiet year for him. He's had his spots, but the dancing is just kind of fuel for the fire, especially when your team is struggling to be productive. At that point, you might maybe want to get a little bit more focused. He says that he's going to continue to be himself, and I guess you can't knock him for that, but it doesn't look as great when you're not being a productive receiver.
They've got a guaranteed playoff game, but they got a lot to figure out. They are rightfully plummeting down power rankings and in the eye of the public, and until they prove that they're anything other than this team we've seen for the last month who can't score 20 points to save their life, then they're no threat in the AFC. I guess that's all I have to say in that regard. Why don't we move on to something a little more cheerful?
Yeah, we can. So that was kind of the recap of the games from this past week or from week 15 in the NFL season, I guess I should say. As we wind down the year here, there's going to be talks about the MVP. There's 2 kind of front runners that are at the top of most lists that you'll look at, with those being Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers representing each conference. There's a chance that they could represent their conference in the Super Bowl as well. I don't think that's too far-fetched to say or to think about. But we're going to kind of talk about who is winning that race, who deserves to win that race. And then afterwards, we'll talk about some dark horses. So, Andy, tell us about your selection here, and then I'll go with mine.
All right. Well, we have the list of everyone with MVP odds at the moment. Obviously, you mentioned Mahomes and Rodgers. One of the 2 will almost certainly come away with it. But the other names on the list here, we won't go through their stats, but Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Russell Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger, Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, and Tom Brady. You'll notice 2 guys on there, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, play for the same team. And I do think they're both worthy of consideration in the MVP voting. However, I would say that Derrick Henry, the backbone of the Titans offense, should be getting more attention than he is. 321 carries, 1,679 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's the engine that makes the Titans go. You mentioned him catching another body. Nothing out of the ordinary for Derrick Henry. Workhorse, power back. Phenomenal throwback to a time when more offenses kind of buttered their bread through the running game. The reason I mentioned that both he and Tannehill have odds is because I think without Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill probably wouldn't be in the spot he's in. Not to say that Ryan Tannehill hasn't been great. He's got 3,482 yards, 31 touchdowns, 5 picks. Fabulous, tremendous season, really. But I think the reason he's thriving, the reason Tennessee's at 10-4, the reason they're probably more of a threat to be reckoned with than people are maybe giving them credit for is King Henry, who could well still threaten for 2,000 yards this year. He's got 320 to go. That sounds like a lot in 2 games, but Derrick Henry, we've seen run for 200 plus yards many a times. He had 147 this past week. So I do think, if he balls out the way he could down the stretch here, if we see 2,000 yards, 20 scores, he should rightfully punch his name into that conversation up there with Mahomes and Rodgers.
Yeah, and another dark horse that should be in that conversation as well. I mentioned it earlier. I'm on the bandwagon. Josh Allen, leading his team to a division title for the first time in 25 years, has 351 completions right now for 4,000 yards. That's fourth behind Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and Matt Ryan. Currently has 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. We mentioned that he can make it happen with his legs to 96 carries on the year for 383 yards and 8 scores. So there's no reason that Josh Allen is not in that same conversation as well. We talk about the weapons that he has around him, and I'm not knocking Devin Singletary and Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs. But you look at the front runners with Mahomes having just his arsenal, like pick your poison with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce kind of being the 2 main receivers for him. And then you have, of course, Aaron Rodgers, who has Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones and a stellar offensive line as well. It's arguable that Josh Allen is doing more with less, which might factor into the most valuable player conversation.
I think it's a fair conversation to have. Not that, again, as you said, not that he's devoid of weaponry by any means, but Josh Allen, 30 touchdowns through the air, another 8 on the ground. He's got 38 total, which is just as many as Patrick Mahomes. So as football man crushes go, yours probably isn't too far-fetched. Josh Allen will likely finish 3rd in the MVP voting this year, and we can project him to be on the upswing. The guy's still young, still improving, and excited to see where his career goes.
Yeah, and for like the favorites, so you mentioned that Josh Allen will probably be 3rd. It is essentially a quarterback's award to win. It's year in and year out we see a quarterback win it. So Mahomes and Rodgers kind of being at the top. When it comes down to those 2, I favor Aaron Rodgers. And taking some sort of recency bias out of it, I know that his game was not stellar by any means this week, but he did what he had to do to lead his team to a win. He's playing with a swagger, and I mentioned his complement of targets with Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams and Robert Tonyan, who I mentioned is tied for first with Travis Kelce with touchdowns scored by tight ends at 10, but also just Aaron Rodgers' swagger. So he did an interview with Kay Adams on NFL Network. You might have seen it, where he talks about how he has old man swag and he purposely doesn't play with rib pads because he wants to seem like a badass. He's also referenced himself as one of the GOATs in another interview this week. He's having a total FU season. Like, yeah, go ahead and take a quarterback in the draft. I'm still here. I'm still the dude. And he has at least one touchdown pass to 9 different receivers when you compare that to Patrick Mahomes, who only has a touchdown to 8 different receivers. And who's also throwing to Patrick Mahomes is also throwing to 2 receivers in the top 5 in receiving yards in Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, where Aaron Rodgers is just throwing to bums because he has 0 in the top 5 in receiving yards. I'm joking, obviously. Devontae Adams is in 7th and is one of the top receivers for touchdown score this year. But that's why I would pick Aaron Rodgers over Patrick Mahomes for this award.
You really can't go wrong either way. Statistically, I guess there is a slight favor for Rodgers with 40 scores and 4 picks. Mahomes, on the other hand, has 36 and 5. Again, nothing to sneeze at. of course, with these kinds of things, recency does tend to play a part. Mahomes is the flavor of the moment. He is the reigning, or no, I'm sorry, he's not the reigning MVP, but he is the reigning Super Bowl MVP. He does already have an MVP on his mantle. You wonder if the voters will tend to favor the hot newer commodity or the one they kind of have gotten used to. Not to discredit Rodgers, but we've seen Mahomes' transcendency week after week. We continue to do so, and I don't think a difference of 4 touchdowns, which he could well make up in any given quarter, really, is enough for Rodgers to usurp him. I think Mahomes continues to be the best quarterback in the NFL. Who does the MVP go to?
Gosh, I'm staying with Rodgers, but it's up in the air. And by the way, Aaron, if I'm going to be banging the drum for you, this has to be kind of a two-way street. I know that like protecting my credibility is really high up on your playing, on like your preferences for your playing. So make sure that if I'm going to bang the drum for you, you go out and toss 3-4 touchdowns a game, and we'll kind of call it even. Okay, just you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back as well. And kind of just talking to wrap this up here, I heard on Good Morning Football today, one of the guys referenced, just because we expect greatness because we've seen it for so long doesn't mean that it should go underappreciated. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing with Aaron Rodgers and what we're starting to see with Patrick Mahomes too, because we just kind of expect him to go out and be spectacular week in and week out. So that's what we got for the MVP. We are kind of up against it, so I'm going to go ahead and just rattle off the college championships from this weekend, if that's all the same to you, my friend.
How about it?
All right, cool. So in the ACC, Clemson beat Notre Dame 34-10, kind of gets their redemption from when Notre Dame beat Clemson earlier in the season. This time with Trevor Lawrence, obviously, was a different story. He had 322 yards, 2 touchdowns, also had 90 yards on the ground, and a touchdown there. In the Big Ten, Ohio State beat Northwestern 22-10. Trey Sermon breaks Ezekiel Elliott's Big Ten championship game rushing record. Zeke previously at 220. Trey Sermon with 331 yards on the ground. Good Lord, buddy. Go get him, Trey. In the Big 12, where apparently they don't play defense, it was a relatively low-scoring game. Oklahoma beat Iowa State 27-21, although Iowa State on the field came out in some sexy black uniforms. It was blackout uniforms with like a white, silver-ish type of lettering on it. Very, very nice. Spencer Rattler had a decent game with 272 yards and a touchdown. Also had another touchdown on the ground, so 2 total. And then if there is an award for name in college football, I want this dude on it. Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson, what a name, buddy. Had 18 carries, 97 yards as well. In the SEC, Alabama beat Florida 52-46. Alabama had a solid outing. This is more of a Big 12 score than the SEC championship game, but regardless, Mac Jones had 418 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns and a pick for Alabama. On the other side, Kyle Trask had 408 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. And that's not to say that there wasn't a plethora of offense or an abundance of offense on both sides, I guess I should say. Najee Harris had 178 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground for Alabama as well. In the Pac-12, to wind it down, we had Oregon beat USC 31-24. Oregon played on 4 days' notice because Washington ended up having to drop the game against USC due to a COVID outbreak on their team. None of the statistics really kind of stuck out, but kudos to Oregon for beating USC 31-24, picking up that game at the drop of a hat. So we are set for the college football playoffs. It starts January 1st. Alabama plays Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl, and then we have Clemson, Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl. Should be a fun way to spend New Year's Day.
I'm glad Notre Dame's season got prolonged. I'm glad I'll get to see them get waxed one more time by a real contender. I don't want to stay on the subject too long. As you said, we're up against it. Najee Harris, grown man. That boy is scary big. I would not want to tackle him. Trey Sermon's Saturday service was sight to behold on a day where Justin Fields was really kind of lousy. Ohio State kind of imposed their will, showed that they still are far and away the class of the Big Ten, deserve to be a playoff team in spite of what the naysayers might have for you. We'll move on here quick. 4-down territory, one of your favorite segments. I know. I'll lead the way here. I'll ask you. Does number one, does Jacksonville Jaguars running back James Robinson deserve Offensive Rookie of the Year consideration? Robinson at this point has 224 carries, 1,035 yards, 7 touchdowns, and then through the air an additional 46 grabs, 326 yards, 2 scores. We talked about Herbert. We talked about Jefferson. Tua. What about this rookie? Should he be up there?
Yeah, not a slight against James Robinson. He's had a really good year. I believe he got injured on Sunday as well. So that could hurt his chances of even being mentioned in the conversation. I'm going to say no, he does not deserve to be mentioned in that conversation because of Justin Herbert playing extremely well, and then Justin Jefferson, who has all of those accolades as a rookie. I think that he's had a fine season, but if it's going to actually come down to it, I don't know that he would necessarily be in the he wouldn't be a vote. I think it's going to come down to Justin Herbert versus Justin Jefferson.
I respectfully disagree, but that's why we have this show. We can compare, contrast. You're wrong. Anyway, moving on. Should Jets fans be salty about dropping the number 1 pick with their win this week? They got them off the schneid. They are not going to join the hallowed ground of the other 0-16 losers, the Browns, the Lions, the 0-14 1976 Buccaneers. The Jets won't go winless, but a lot of their fans seem to think they lost bigger by possibly losing out on a chance for Trevor Lawrence. What say you?
I've been kind of going back and forth about this all day, and what it kind of comes down to is I consider myself to be a kind of competitive guy, so I like to win. I like when my team wins. So for a fan base to be so up in arms when you get a win at a time when you might not even be the worst team in the NFL by what's the word I'm looking for? Why is it escaping? By record, goodness. I don't really see it. I understand that Trevor Lawrence is going to be somebody who can transform your organization, and I do get that. But the Jets aren't one piece away. Trevor Lawrence was not going to be the sole reason why your team goes from 1-15 to a 500 team and then takes steps to get better. I get it. I understand why you're so upset. It's like the infomercials where if you've been a Jets fan in 2020, you may be entitled to compensation. Your compensation is not going to be Trevor Lawrence. I don't feel that bad for you.
Tough break. But you get what you get and you don't get upset. Enjoy Justin Fields, John. Number 3, 3rd down here for you. Hayden, what's the best or worst Christmas gift you've ever gotten? We are in the holiday season.
So the first one that came to mind a couple of years ago, I received a single Eagles seat cover for my car. It was one single seat cover. I was at that time I was driving a Subaru Outback, so I had the choice of either putting it on my seat and not caring about the passenger, or putting it on the passenger seat so everybody could kind of see it, but then there would not be a seat cover on my seat. I think that might be the worst. And then I guess it might have been like 2011, I got my first iPhone, and that was a pretty cool Christmas gift. What is the best or worst Christmas gift that you have gotten?
The best was Dragon Ball Z pinball. I played it underneath my desk in 3rd grade all day, every day. The worst, far and away, was the Scooby-Doo movie in Spanish. Let me tell you, a young Andy was thrilled to have gotten Scooby-Doo. Pop that sucker in the VCR, not so much. Thanks, Graham.
I'm just picturing you trying to decipher what the hell is being said in Spanish. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Feliz Navidad. Number 4, 4th down for all the marbles. Would you rather go to a Taylor Swift concert with me or a me concert with Taylor Swift?
Oh, buddy, since you texted me this a few days ago, I've been giving it the consideration that it deserves, and I've been really breaking it down analytically. So what I've come down to is there's two pieces to this: performance and then actual enjoyment at the show. So I am not a fan of Taylor Swift's music. That's nothing against Taylor. It's just not for me. I wasn't a fan before she left country music. I'm not a fan now that she's whatever genre that she is. So I don't think that her concert would be enjoyable for me. Now, on the other side, I've seen you perform Ice Ice Baby on multiple occasions. And the way that you're able to kind of hone in the crowd and the showmanship behind it, and there's an energy there's a presence. You don't miss a beat. You don't miss a word. You would probably be who I would choose to see out of you and Taylor Swift. And then on the other side, it's somebody that I have to take to the concert. So I have not met Taylor Swift personally, and I guess it just hasn't happened yet. Like with our show kind of blowing up the way that it has, I feel like I'm a similar caliber celebrity to Taylor Swift. She and I are kind of on the same level there. So it will happen. Our paths will cross at some of the red carpet events that we go to. She doesn't seem like somebody who would appreciate my humor, and I know you would. So it's tough because there's a pro and a con on each side. I am taking you to the Taylor Swift concert, and we might just kind of make fun of the Taylor Swift concert as a whole, but I'm taking you to the Taylor Swift concert.
Boy, that warms my heart because my answer is just the same. I had already made plans. We're going to pregame in the parking lot with a couple Four Locos. We're going to heckle teenage girls. We'll get kicked out by the third song, but buddy, those 8 minutes, woo, we're living.
Thank God that nobody actually sticks around to hear this part of the show. So we are out of time. I am Hayden Yerashunas. That's Andy Watkins. From all of us here at We Like Football to your family, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Enjoy it. Spend some time with your family. Relax. We like football.
Like, share, subscribe, get yoked.